Today we're tackling a topic that's been a staple of traditional sales for decades, the cold call. But let's be real, the cold call is dead. And yes, we're exaggerating. The cold call isn't dead, it's just evolved. In this video, we're gonna break down the history of the cold call, why it's no longer working like it used to, and smarter strategies that you can start using today to fill that pipeline without dialing a single number. Let's go ahead and rewind the clock to 1873 before the telephone even existed. John Patterson, the founder of the National Cash Register, drafted a templated sales script, something a lot of you salespeople know a little something about, and sent his reps knocking on doors to repeat that script. Does that technique sound familiar? Maybe kind of like how sales reps today have templated call scripts and responses to any rejections that come their way. 3 years after that templated script was created, Mr. Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, and thus began cold calling. As more and more people began installing telephones into their homes, sales reps started calling instead of knocking on doors. By the 1950s, we were in the golden age of cold calling. Back then, there was no LinkedIn, there was no email, there was no social media, there was no sliding into the DMs. All sales reps had were a phone and a list of prospects that they needed to call. Imagine that, you're a sales rep in the 1950s, you walk into your job and you have a massive stack of phone books and you just have to call number after number, hoping that somebody's gonna pick up. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack, except you don't have a needle finder, you just have gut instinct and sheer persistence. During this time period, men were also the ones that were primarily working day jobs while women were staying at home. So a lot of times women would answer the home phone, get all the information, and then pass the information along to the decision maker, also known as the husband. This specific power dynamic might be outdated, but it's kind of like what we see today. Reps call mid-level managers, they start conversations with them, but ultimately, the final approval lands in the hands of the higher up decision maker. But as we all know, what worked back then doesn't always work today. Today, things have changed dramatically. There's so many reasons why cold calling is not as effective as it used to be, and I'm gonna break those down for you. Let's start with the obvious. People don't want to talk to strangers because we're already experiencing an overload of communication. Once we started to be able to bring our phones with us beyond just the home or the office, we got bombarded with so much information. People were hit with massive amounts of emails, texts, social media notifications, and yes, cold calls. In fact, over 85% of cold calls go unanswered, let alone the calls that do get answered but are hung up immediately. People are busy and they don't have time for unsolicited phone calls. It's like trying to get a T-Rex to sit still in a classroom. It's just not gonna happen. And because people are so tired of hearing from strangers, Apple has invented technology that automatically labels anything that might be a cold call as spam. My phone doesn't even ring if I don't know the person. Thanks to caller ID and spam filters, most people can immediately tell when someone's calling just to sell something. They can see that John from XYZ company is calling, and so they know not to answer. And let's face it, there's been a major shift in buyer behavior. Buyers hate being sold to more than ever. Today's buyers are more informed than ever. They do all of their research before even starting a conversation with you. So when you cold call them, they probably already Googled your company, checked out your competitors, and read a few reviews. By the time you get on the phone with each other, they probably already know more about your company than you do. Cold calls are also intrusive. When you pick up the phone and a stranger immediately starts talking about what they're selling, it feels like more of an interruption than a conversation. This feeling only worsens when the salesperson doesn't have anything personalized to say. A cold call is a one-size-fits-all approach. You're dialing these numbers hoping for the best without knowing anything about the person on the other end. In today's world, that's simply not enough. People want a personal experience. Here's the good news. There's plenty of other, more effective and less intrusive ways for you to build relationships and fill your pipeline. Personally, I love the warm introduction. Instead of blindly dialing numbers, you can tap into your biggest source of untapped pipeline, your network. People buy from people they trust, and warm introductions and referrals are much more powerful than a cold call. Imagine this, you've got a friend in common with the prospect and they vouch for you. That's like having a secret weapon. You're already establishing credibility before you even have the first conversation. A warm introduction builds rapport before that first contact through the transfer of trust. And social selling is another way that you can build trust. Platforms like LinkedIn, Twitter, and even Instagram have changed the way that salespeople can approach their leads. Before cold calling, you can build relationships through content, engagement, and personalized messages. This strategy focuses on providing value first, building trust second, and only then asking for a sale. Social selling works because it allows you to nurture your prospects before you even pick up the phone. Content marketing is another variation of social selling. It allows your prospects to come to you. By creating valuable content like blog posts, case studies, white papers, and videos, you can attract leads that are already interested in your product or service. They're essentially raising their hand saying, hey, I want to learn more. And here's where Commsor comes in. We're all about helping teams leverage their network and build sustainable and effective pipelines. Our platform automates the process of finding warm introductions so you're not wasting time dialing through a bunch of numbers that might not answer. With Commsor, you can use your network to build relationships and connect with prospects in a way that actually feels natural. No cold calls necessary. So while maybe we started this video with a bit of an exaggeration, the truth is that the sales landscape is changing. Dialing more and more numbers in the hopes that someone answers the phone is not going to help your sales pipeline like it used to. We believe that your network is your greatest asset. If you want to build a sales pipeline that lasts, it's time to shift gears and start using smarter, more effective strategies. Check out our video here on the mindset that you need to start selling the way buyers want to buy.